Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you and good morning. State Board will come back to order. Ms. Marama, would you please call the roll?
Hold on one second. Sorry. Board Member Durham?
Here.
Board Member Goff?
Here.
Board Member McClellan?
Here.
Board Member Rankin?
Here.
Board Member Sheffield?
Here.
Board Member Schroeder?
Here.
Board Member Flores?
Here. Why am I the last one?
Sorry, I didn't have my paper up, so I went out of order.
Okay.
So this morning, first item on the agenda is the CDE budget. Commissioner? Good morning, Ms. Mello.
Good morning.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we have been talking with all of you about this at length over the last 3 weeks. So look forward to giving the summary presentation. I'm going to turn it over to our two Jennifers, Ms. Mello and Ms. Oakes, to give us the presentation. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, thank you. I'm just now realizing I should have asked this question before, but do I put the presentation up or does somebody else do that for us? Sorry.
We should have had this.
Should have, and I apologize.
Jennifer Oakes, can you bring it up by chance? Or Angela?
I'm happy to present for you if that's easiest. Let me just pull it up for you.
Let's do Angela so that Jennifer can see the screen.
Thank you, board members, for your patience with my failure to ask an important technical question. Everybody enjoying the beautiful morning? It's gorgeous outside.
Eh.
Yeah.
It's smoky. It's smoky again.
Oh, it's not so smoky where I am. What you got there, Jane?
Jane, you're on mute.
Well, I'm fascinated by whatever Rebecca just held up. I don't know what that is.
Jennifer will get this.
I do get that. It's a Barbie doll.
Okay.
It's a candidate Barbie doll.
A mutual friend of ours gave Rebecca the candidate Barbie doll from the Barbie doll series. So it's just a little joke.
Well, what I had in my hand cannot compare. So let's just move ahead.
All right. And we are here. And I know that today's going to be a long day, so we're just going to jump right into it. Angela, do you mind going ahead to the second slide, past the title slide? Thank you. Okay. So last time we spoke, we talked about basically difficult budget situation. The legislature got its quarterly economic forecast in September. Things did look a little bit better than they looked in June. So that's, yay, right? For lots and lots of different reasons. I think it is important to acknowledge that while our state economists are projecting growth, it's growth from a low point, right? So we were here. I don't know if you all see my hands. We went to here, and now we're going up just a little bit. So it's growth, but it's growth from a historically low point, and that's why it's not quite as exciting news as it might be otherwise. I think it's always important to recognize that just when revenues increase in the state, there's almost as quickly caseload pressures to take up those revenues. And some of that is in the K-12 system, but Medicaid is really the other place where the way Medicaid works is if you're eligible and you're on Medicaid, we have to take you and we have to pay for you. And as the Medicaid rolls continue to expand, our healthcare obligations expand, and that even in good times eats up a fair amount of whatever revenue growth we might have. Bottom line, yes, we've got some revenue growth. Doesn't mean we don't have to have the somewhat painful conversation we're about to have about budget cuts. Next slide, please. This is just a quick reminder. We've been over this with you all in your board meeting and in all of our individual conversations, these were the criteria we used in presenting these proposed reductions to you. We tried to protect things that were directly tied to our strategic plan, particularly early literacy. Within grant programs, we really looked for programs that showed evidence of effectiveness. We looked to preserve some core CDE infrastructure. Next slide, please. Okay, so starting to get into some numbers here. If you look at the total Department of Education budget, we're talking about, this is an unbelievable number, $4.96 billion with the B dollars. That is the total amount of money that the state just shows flowing into the Department of Education. Importantly, if you look at this first bullet, 91.5% of that, or $4.53 billion, goes right back out the door to school districts through the School Finance Act and the categoricals. So we are really a pass-through for the vast majority of the funds that come into the department. There's another 2.5% of that total that is COP payments, debt payments for the BEST program, right? So those are obligations that have been entered into with bondholder type people, and we would be in default if we stopped paying those. They're not really eligible for reduction in the same way that other programs are. So when you do all this math, and your really smart staff did all the math, not me, which is a good thing, it's about a $293 million operational program budget at CDE that we are focused on today. And that's where we're trying to cut the 10% from. So I'm just going to pause for a second. I want to make sure that sinks in. These exact same numbers we showed you all when we talked with you individually last week, so that hasn't changed. But you take the whole big budget and it gets narrowed really quickly, and we're cutting 10% of that part that we have control over. I mean, we can't really cut the parts we don't have control over. I'm kind of just going to watch for body language to see if I should pause, and I'm not seeing anything that indicates I should, so I'm going to keep going. Please, next slide. I think as we have this conversation, just a few things to keep in mind. None of this is easy. None of this is fun. I don't think any of you and any of us want, there's other conversations we would prefer to be having right now. This is painful. We have to acknowledge that there are just trade-offs and value judgments that get made in this. And I think it's reasonable people could make different trade-offs and different value judgments. And we may see some of that play out as this heads over to the legislative process. We have done our very best as your staff to give you a set of proposals that reflect the trade-offs and values that you've shared with us. Important to note that we really value the dedication and the commitment and the expertise of CDE staff in these impacted programs. And then also just to note that this is just the beginning of the process. So things will evolve and change and adjust as we go through. We may get more revenue, we will get more revenue information, right? That may change this picture. Legislators may say, gosh, we really don't like the fact that you wanted to cut that program. We think this other program should be cut. Stakeholder groups may say the same thing. So there's lots and lots of opportunity for, I don't know if opportunity is the right word. I think we should expect that this is not going to be a static process or a static list. Next slide, please. Okay. You all have a spreadsheet that I don't know if you have in front of you. I know it can, I struggle to have documents in front of me and be looking at a virtual meeting. There is nothing radically different here from what we've spoke with you guys about last week when we walked through the spreadsheet. And again, you should have access to a functional version of that so you can pull all of this up. In terms of operational reductions, we are proposing, there's kind of two subcategories. The first bullet here, operating savings, that's the travel, the admin, some contractual savings. It's that type of thing. And a lot of them are in little small increments of $10,000 here and $6,000 there. And, they add up to $884,647. On the personnel side, on the FTE side, we're proposing reductions of $972,330. that is almost all vacancy savings. So it's taking positions that are currently open, choosing not to fill those positions now or in the future, and that's where we're picking up the majority of those savings. The total CDE operations reductions, you can see there is 1.856,977 million. And just a note about process that I should have said before I started this slide, my apologies. We've got 3 different categories here. We didn't, as we talked about, it didn't seem to make sense to have you all vote on 56 different line items. That seemed cumbersome and not very helpful. So we've grouped the cuts into 3 different areas. We've got operational, this is the first one. We've got 2 more to come. More detail for you all in the next 2 because it's more program stuff and policy stuff that I know you all really care about. But what we're hoping, and it's really up to you all, we can pause and discuss these operational cuts and take the vote now, or I can go through all 3 categories and we can do 3 votes at the end of that. It's up to you. Madam Chair, do you have a preference for how we proceed on that? You're on mute, Madam Chair.
Muting me. Angela, I unmute and you mute me again. I don't know what's going on. I can't see anything. So if we're to have a discussion, you need to take that overhead off so we can see one another. Katie, what do you wish?
I guess maybe because of that, because you're having technical difficulties with seeing the slides, maybe we keep going and then we do all 3 votes at the end.
So I do see the slides because I have them up on my other device, but I can't see if anybody puts their hands up or anything like that. So I don't know. Colleagues, are there questions you have at this stage?
Madam Chair, this is Board Member McClellan. I'm wondering if it, hi, good morning. I'm wondering, since we're looking at these items in 3 different chunks, would it be helpful if I made a motion regarding the area that Ms. Mello has just presented?
I think that's the way staff intended to structure this. Am I right, Commissioner? That's why I'm asking you.
Sure, that's fine. We can definitely do it that way. Yep. So we would do a motion and a vote on this particular issue.
Okay.
I'll throw one out and see if anybody has an objection or if it gets a second. I move to approve the proposed operational reductions for submission as part of the department's November 1 budget request to the Joint Budget Committee.
Second.
Thank you. So, Ms. Miranda, would you please turn off the overhead so that I can see folks and we can go through and look for questions? Thank you. In terms of discussion, Board Member McClellan, do you have any comments, concerns? Are there particular items that you would like to discuss?
Well, I just wanted to share that I know none of us want to be in this position, and I really appreciate the work that the department staff has done to try to present us with a budget reduction request that aligns with the goals that our board has identified as important. And I really appreciate staff and also Ms. Mello for taking the time to allow us to go over this so we could really, process and digest all of these proposals over the course of, about a week so that we could have time to, I think it was about a week ago. It feels like 2 years, but that was very nice to have the extra time and to be able to ask all those questions offline. And so thank you for taking that time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Board Member McClellan. Board Member Goff?
No questions.
You, Board Member Sheffel?
No, I don't have questions either. And again, appreciate the opportunity to have gone over this offline. So thank you.
Board Member Rankin?
Yeah, I have one question on the personal services savings of 972,330. It's the second bullet point. And my question is, Ms. Mello, you said now or in the future. If things are changing, how do we know we're not going to need that in the future and we can continue to not have that in the budget?
Great question. Madam Chair, may I
Please, go ahead.
respond? Thank you. I think what we're trying to say is that we are as part of the effort to participate in sharing the pain with, our schools and our districts and other state agencies. We are willing at this moment to say we don't need those positions. If we change our minds in the future, we'd have to go forward with a budget request to add them back in. And we could do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Or, it's not like, anyways, I think enough said.
A budget request to whom, Ms. Mello?
To the Joint Budget Committee. So if we want to add those positions back in the future, we'd go through our normal budget process, which is we go to the JBC and we say, for this, that, and the other reason, we need one more staff person here and two more staff person here, and it goes through the whole legislative process.
Which takes a while.
Mm-hmm.
And how many FTE was that, please?
Jennifer, can you get me precise on that, please?
Yes, it was 10.2 FTE.
Wow, so we were going to the legislature, we had planned to go to the legislature requesting, 4 additional FTE, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me.
Last year, we did have some requests that involved FTE, if that's what you're referring to, Madam Chair.
Yeah. I'm not objecting to the fact that these are cuts, but I find it frustrating that we have to go through what turns out to be roughly a 1-year process. Should we identify that, oops, this particular cut creates a critical situation for the way we serve schools. So that concerns me a little bit, but I guess the process is the process. Board member, will you finish, Ms. Rankin?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Board member Flores, do you have questions?
Yes, I do. It's surprising to me that 4 extra people would be almost $1 million. Is that correct?
No.
Madam Chair, Board Member Flores, I think the reference to 4 was from a previous budget year. The figure that you're looking at in the presentation represents 10.2 FTE or 10.2 staff people.
Okay. Okay, that's, still.
Yeah.
I'm just, no, I'm just comparing to other years. Back when. So thank you. Thank you for that information.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Board member Durham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. How many employees do we have total? Katie or Jennifer?
I think that's Jennifer O, yes.
Yeah. I don't have an exact number, but 490 comes to mind. So just under 500, I believe.
I think before we all wring our hands, we need to put in perspective. 10 out of 500 employees, which you never like to have less than you did, but most of us in our lifetimes have had periods of difficulty where we've had significantly less than we had some years before. So I don't view this cut as being significant, and I think proper management. I have every confidence in Dr. Anthus can administer. We should be able to function roughly at the same level we did function. And we also have to keep in mind that this budget that we're talking about begins June 30th, 2021. That is, 8 months from now, give or take. A lot can happen in 8 months. We have 3 revenue forecasts now and then can lead to some relief. And it would appear that everybody in Washington is using about the same number for education, which is $105 billion. Colorado's share of that would be, in round numbers, about $1.7 billion. That's more than we've cut. So there's I think it's highly likely that that money will sometime between now and June 30th, 2021 be available. We'll probably be back here with a completely different scenario. So I don't think there's any reason to wring hands or in any way indicate we can't get a quality job done if we have to serve with the amount of money that we have. And I just don't think there's any reason to alarm the public that, or in any way indicate that the world is coming to an end. I think the public, we should be focusing on the success, lack thereof, of distance education. So, thank you.
Thank you. I guess the one comment I would make is that in my work on the school board, I've been through this before. It is true that you go on and you serve as best you can, but to suggest that there's no change in services that the department is going to be able to provide is pretty optimistic. It suggests that we have 10 FTE that don't make a difference, and I am aware of how hard our staff is already working. So I think we just have to figure out what are the things that we can do without. I don't think things will be exactly the same as usual. And I am hopeful that some of this will be returned. This does help us figure out where the most critical needs are as we move forward. Ms. Mello and Ms. Oakes, go ahead and continue and turn me off again.
Well, I think it's just time for you all to take the vote on the motion.
Oh, that's right, we have a vote. Ms. Maramba, please.
Board Member Durham,
Yes.
Board Member Flores, Board Member Flores,
Yes.
Board Member Goff,
Yes.
Board Member McClellan,
Yes.
Board Member Rankin,
Yes.
Board Member Sheffield,
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes,
That
thank you.
passes 7-0.
Thank you all. Angela, can you go ahead and put the presentation back up, please? Everyone take one more sip of coffee. Angela, we're not seeing, we just see an empty box, or I just see an empty box. Madam Chair, are you seeing an empty box as well, or?
I just see MA, and I just see a little note that somebody raised their hand, but I can't see who.
Okay.
Yeah, it is just an empty box. But
You know, since we had to drop off and go back on yesterday under a different phone number or whatever, it has not been very good at all. And I've not seen any of the displays. So just for feedback for the platform.
So I can go ahead, just to keep us moving along, if you'll give me just 1 second, I can at least, this one I need to be able to look at because it's pretty substantive, but I think I can get us to a place where we can move if you give me just 1 more second here.
I will try to pull this up. Angela's texting me saying she's having, her Teams is crashing, so she can't unmute either. So I'm gonna try to do my best to be technically savvy.
So I think, Katie, I think most of us have a second device with which we're looking at the PowerPoint.
Right. Jennifer Mello, do you have yours up so you can keep going?
I do, and I just got it up. So if that's okay, while you work on the technical stuff, I will start talking so that we can move along. Okay, so we've taken care of the operational category. The next category for discussion is grant program reductions. There's a lot here Again, this is all very similar to what we spoke with you about last week individually. This is all reflected in the spreadsheet we sent you over the weekend. So I'm not going to spend enormous amounts of time on any one of these programs because we don't have that much time. But I will run through it really quickly. The first category of reductions is, oh, thank you, Katie, or whomever is making that happen. Thank you. The first category of reductions is, these are reductions the Joint Budget Committee and the legislature made last year on a one-time basis, and we're proposing to continue those reductions. So we got the idea from other people for these ones. The School Counselor Corps, we're proposing a $250,000 cut there. The local food purchasing program, that is a $675,000 reduction. That does put that entire program on hold again for the year. That's the entirety of its budget. And then same thing with the computer science education program. That is a $250,000 reduction. That is the entirety of the program. This is the computer science program that supports schools and districts in getting students involved in computer science education. There are other computer science programs, but that's what this particular one is, to be clear. We're proposing reductions in the following grant programs. We're proposing 9.4 million, I believe, in best cash grants. We're proposing a 10% reduction in the charter school capital construction, which adds up to about $3 million. We're proposing a $500,000 reduction in the concurrent enrollment expansion program, and we're proposing a $1.2 million reduction in the career development incentives grant program. There's one program so really there are three programs that would not be implemented at all. The local school for purchasing computer science that I talked about over in that first category. Additionally, we're adding the workforce diploma pilot program to that list. That is a $200,000 program. So those are the grant programs. And then as we discussed in our meetings, we have found some unused fund balances that we would like to revert to the state as part of this budget balancing package. There is $5.5 million in the early literacy fund. We had a lot of conversations with you guys about this when we met with you one-on-one. The vast majority of this money is because we couldn't spend money last year because of COVID. And as a reminder, under statute, this money just goes, the statute says, put it in this fund if you don't spend it. And then it doesn't give us any authority to do any good work with it. So we can return that fund balance without impacting the current scope of work that we're doing. We're proposing to continue the suspension of the PE pilot program, which is $750,000, and revert those dollars. And then this at-risk supplemental aid is, think about it this way. Every year, the legislature gives us a cushion. So just in case school districts at-risk numbers change, we have a cushion to fund that. We've never needed the full cushion, ever. And we're still keeping some cushion, but we're proposing to revert half of that cushion as part of this budget balancing package. So that's a lot of information. Madam Chair, I think we're kind of working under the assumption that at this point, someone might want to propose a motion and we can discuss and vote.
Thank you, Ms. Mello. May I have a motion, please? And then turn us back on again, please. Katie, I'm sorry about that.
I move to approve the proposed grant program reductions for submission as part of the department's November 1st budget request to the JBC.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All right, let's go down the line with questions, comments. Board Member McClellan? Mute. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, sorry. No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Got it. Board Member Goff?
No questions.
Board Member Sheffel?
No questions, thank you.
Board Member Rankin?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Board Member Flores?
Well, I'm concerned about all that reduction in training. Let's see what just looks like a lot of money to reduce. Well, I know 60 million for, well, I'm looking at it on the screen because I didn't have it. I didn't have it on. It wasn't in my folder, so this is the first time I'm kind of looking at it.
Let me go to
but-
Board Member Durham and then I'll get back to you. Is that
Okay,
okay?
thank you. Thank you.
Board Member Durham?
Excuse me, no questions, thank you.
I guess I have one question, and that is particularly with grants, they're often matching funds, either to the state or at the district level. What have we done? Do we feel assured that the cut isn't just the cut, but in fact, more so because we can't meet a match? We can no longer meet a match.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't believe any of these programs are federal matching programs. So you are right that there's a lot of that stuff that comes into the department, but that is not. These are all state programs that we administer to districts, but there's no matching requirements. And Jennifer Oakes, if I've misspoken, please correct me.
No, that's correct.
So Ms. Oakes, you're not aware of any local matches either that are problematic for because there are federal funds that go directly to school districts.
Right. With these, there's no federal funding implicated. The Best Cash Grant program does have a local match, but we're reducing that. So there would still be that opportunity for that matching for the remaining cash grants in that program, but no federal funds are implicated.
Do our districts know what it is that we're looking at cutting at the state level?
I mean, this is all public, obviously, as a board. This is a public meeting, and these materials are all posted on board docs, like all of your other, board materials. So it's public information.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Flores, do you have any
Yes,
questions?
I found it. I did find it, and I know that you spoke about it before, but I didn't. It didn't kind of register, but it does now. It's a return funds from early literacy fund balance, and I see early literacy as not just 0 to 5, but up to 3rd grade. That's early literacy to me, and I just can't see how we're returning $5,500,000 when we know that the brain is still, children's brains are still growing and can be learning, and that we couldn't have a similar program for kids that are in K through 3rd grade, where they would have, and maybe it's not the imagination program, the Dolly Parton one, but one that is, kids really like those scholastic books that are kind of the latest books that are out, and whether a package couldn't be made for kids in, K through 3rd grade that they could have for the year.
Board Member Flores, there was a specific explanation for this particular
yes,
item.
I remember the explanation.
It
and
is
that's
unused.
Because, yes, but that's still $5 million, and we still are behind in literacy because 60% of our 3rd graders are not reading at grade level by 3rd grade. So I see a big need there, and I think that we have a lot of poor kids in this state, vulnerable kids that could use such a program in that area. And maybe this is something that the legislature could take up. And we have our representative there who could, I know there's a need there. And those funds I know have been targeted, but they also could be moved because of the great need there in K through third grade. Anyway, it's just a thought, and
Thank you. No one
I
disagrees with you.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Mello, do you want to comment?
We worked very hard in this budget proposal to you to do everything in our power to preserve the literacy funding. We know that's a huge priority for you as a board. These are dollars that we can't spend. It's weird that they would just sit there, but our choice is really to turn them back to the state as part of this overall package, and therefore avoid having to make deeper cuts in other literacy programs, or they just sit there. So this feels like the best of two not great alternatives.
Yeah. And so I know, Ms. Mello, that you do a great, fantastic job with the legislature. And if anything, could be done to take a couple of million from there and work it into a program such that I am talking about, it would really help immeasurably, I'm sure.
Okay. That's I think something for us to make sure we're cognizant of as if and when the budget situation changes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, colleagues? Ms. Maramba, would you please call the vote?
Board Member Durham. Board Member Durham. Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Sheppel.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
That passes 6-0.
Okay. I don't know where the commissioner / tech support is. There we go. Look at her. She's so good at her job. And all our jobs. Katie, can you go to the other programmatic reduction slide? Thank you very much. Okay, so I wish we tried to come up with a better name for this particular category than other. Clearly we failed, so apologies for that. This is kind of a variety of things are lumped in here, to be honest with you. So the first reduction we're proposing here is to reduce the Ascent slots from 500 to 250 to focus the slots that we have left on our highest need students. We're proposing to reduce our contribution to the Colorado Library Consortium by 10%. That's a $100,000 reduction. We're proposing a suspension of the P-TECH program, which is funding for that kind of 5th and 6th year of high school. We're proposing to suspend the 4th and 7th grade social studies assessments. As we've talked with you about before, those are done on a sampling basis. When you combine the statutory requirement for sampling with the hybrid type of education system we've got in this current school year, the data that would come out of that is, we're not sure how useful it would be. So it seems like an opportunity to save a little money and then come back to that testing when things are hopefully back to normal. We're suspending the Innovative Learning Opportunity Pilot Program, and we are eliminating a program that basically said the state has to reimburse districts for basic skills testing, which has hardly been used. I know that was quick. I'm trying to balance here our time requirements with giving you information you all need. How about we just go to questions or motion in questions, and I'm happy to respond to anything in the question period.
Thank you, Ms. Mello. May I have a motion, please? And then we'll go to questions. Colleagues?
I move to approve the proposed other programmatic reductions for submission as part of the department's November 1st budget request to the Joint Budget Committee.
It's a proper motion. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Thank you very much. So let's go down the line. Board Member McClellan, do you have comments or questions?
I do not. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Board Member Goff? Well, I read your lips, so that worked. Board Member Shuffle?
Madam Chair, Board Member Shuffle had to step away for a minute.
Yes, she did tell us, she did warn us of that. She's excused. Board Member Rankin,
Yes.
you have questions?
No, I was voting yes.
Oh. You're ahead of us, Madam Rankin. Board Member Flores, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you very much.
Board Member Durham?
No questions.
Thank you. So let's see, I did have a question. And I guess it's a question for the commissioner. Do you know what happens with the P-TECH program without the funding?
I think it would just be as it's discussed. It would be suspended. These, I believe, I'm not sure if we have our program staff on or if Alyssa can help. I believe we probably wouldn't be able to give new grants for new P-TECH programs, but it wouldn't impact the current ones. That's what I think. But any program staff can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, this is Joe. This is funded on a per student basis. First, there are the schools and districts that have been approved to participate in the pilot program. And then if once approved, then any of those students in that 5th and 6th year that are participating in that would be eligible for full-time funding. And so I think this suspension would just eliminate their ability to get full-time funding for those students in the 5th and 6th years.
Would the students then have the option to pay? I mean, this is a program that has been pretty popular, at least in one of my schools. And I'm just curious whether we know how they can move forward if they've made that commitment. We don't know. I know there's some outside funding, correct, from the business community?
Yes, it's a partnership between the district, a community college, and then also a business. And so it's a combination of the students over their 6-year period of participating in this program. They start in 9th grade and continue for 6 years. It's throughout all of those years, it's a combination of high school classrooms, work, internships or apprenticeships in that business, and then taking some community colleges. So the specific combination of activities during the 5th and 6th year may vary from school to school and possibly even from student to student. So by the time you're in a 5th or 6th year, it's possible that you're doing less classroom work either at the school or the community college and more work on site at the company. And so that could continue. And so the work at the company could continue. It's just that there wouldn't be the pupil funding associated with that.
Is the per pupil funding the full funding for those kids?
Yes, it's full-time funding for all of the 5th and 6th year students in those districts.
Wow. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Ms. Maramba, would you call the vote, please?
Madam Chair, looks like you have one question that came up from Board Member Goff.
Goff,
Yeah.
Yep. I don't see her, but I see her little hand. Board Member Goff?
That other little hand, thank you. Just a procedural down the road question. The suspension, the reduction, the elimination. Do you guys foresee having that be like a first in, last out type of situation in the future so that next year, if necessary, the board will have an opportunity to decide which, if any of those, to reintroduce, to bring back, to keep on suspension, to do all that. Just trying to think ahead. That even especially right now, the reduction list, I would think would be kind of a top priority for reconsideration, but just curious, thinking ahead.
Yeah, and Board Member Goff, as always, you read our minds. So the next slide, we're going to talk to you a little bit about prioritization for the future and how we might do that if the situation changes. And really that's focused on reestablishing, using students and student needs as the criteria for reestablishment if more funding becomes available or that's an option. So.
Okay, I was really thinking to specify also a little bit, tying in with Dr. Flores' question about what we now know are unused funds, but what are the options and possibilities for actually applying those in that kind of situation? So
yeah. Well, and I think with particular to the unused funds, I mean, it's good that we have found those, identified those, and yeah, I could certainly see you all as a board in the future deciding to go forward with a budget request to spend those dollars in early literacy. I mean, that's an option, and we would be presenting those types of things to future boards for future budgets.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ramba?
Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
It passes 6-0.
Thank you all very much. The one last slide that I'm going to go over is exactly what I just told you. If the legislature decides it's not necessary to cut the full 29 million, our suggestion would be that we focus on students and prioritizing what is protected, with the first priority for restoration being those grant programs that have a direct student impact. Second priority is the other programs with direct impact. Third priority being restoring some of the operations cuts with direct student impact. We will have that conversation with you if and when that becomes appropriate. We're just not there at this point, but we've done some thinking about that based on really, Madam Chair, your urging, and that would be our proposal for that. So there's no vote or anything needed on that. This is kind of a heads up, and if and when we get to in a position where we actually have specifics to talk about, we'll come back to you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jennifer Squared.
Well, and there's a few more. Jennifer Oaks was going to respond to some of the questions you all had at the last board meeting around districts and funding reductions and funding additions. So that's the next part of this.
Okay, Ms. Oaks.
Yeah, so this is much of an overview or a repeat of the information that we presented before. So the School Finance Act did, as you know, had the reductions. And so that was a total program reduction of $367 some million. The budget stabilization as part of that was a $601 million reduction. And then within that, there was $37 million that was coronavirus relief funds that were transferred into the state ed fund. That was a portion of that. So not additional money, but within the regular school finance money. So then grant programs were reduced last session by about $110 million through either reductions or eliminations, a combination of that. So there was, reduced state funding, but then also the additional of the federal funding. So that is sort of where districts ended up this year. And so then just a recap of the federal funding on the next slide. So is all under that big CARES Act umbrella. We had the education stabilization funds, the ESSER funds that had the 90% distribution on the formula, Title I formula. Then there's also the discretionary funds that we'll touch on. There's the GEAR funds, and then of course the coronavirus relief funds. So to break down that ESSER funds into a little bit more detail. So again, that first 90% or about 121 million, that was distributed based upon the Title I allocation. Or I'm sorry, that was the 108.9 million that was distributed based upon that. The reserved 10%, a portion of that was just for admin of the monitoring and reporting requirements. And so we've made an initial distribution of that money of the 11.4 or 11.5 million that's remaining. So we've distributed 4.6 million of that. 2.6 million was to school districts, BOCES, and the 2 Colorado tribes that really received little or no relief funding in the initial ESSER allocations, and then 2 million for broadband. The remaining funds are being reserved to sort of see how it plays out once we have more information as the fall continues and we have more information about what the biggest needs are in the districts. So the coronavirus relief funds, again, that was distributed to school districts, CSI, facility schools, as well as the BOCES. And those are the very time limited. They're due on December 30th. So the districts and BOCES need to spend them by December 30th. And then there's the governor's GEAR funds, which include the 33 million for P20 equity and innovation, 5 to 6 million for the Colorado Empowered Learning or CDLS, and then 3 million for the quality teacher. So just a recap of that. And I know that we're short on time.
It's okay. Questions, colleagues? Is this still Katie's? Katie, is this still your control of the computer of the?
Yep, it's still me.
I said it suddenly came up. I could suddenly see it. So I have no. This is very flaky.
Well, good. I'm magic for you.
You are magic for me. Thank you. So I do have a question about these extra COVID funds. To what extent can they be spent on personnel as our districts are struggling with bringing in extra people for anything, having smaller classes, substitute teachers? Right now, I can't think of emergency license teachers, etc. What are the limitations? How do you say this is related to this particular crisis versus these are personnel costs?
Yeah, so they are limited, and it's in response to the COVID pandemic. And so we've done a lot of detailed guidance for districts on how those could be used. One of the things that districts, I think, have been focused on using the CRF funds, those coronavirus relief funds first, just because they do have that shorter time period. And so one of those things that is allowable use is increased instructional time in the fall as compared to the spring. So if you had 3 hours of instruction that you were able to provide remote in the spring post-COVID, and then you compare that to 6 hours that you might be providing a day per day, whether it's remote or hybrid or in person, it's just the number of instructional hours fall compared to the spring. That additional 3 hours that you're providing now, that can be used. And so then that would be a 50% of the time for all of your teachers and instructional staff can be charged there. So we think what we've heard is that provision for that increased instructional time in the fall is a large portion of how districts are using these funds. There's also the provision if somebody has changed their duties, more than 50% of their duties were redirected to do COVID. So a simplistic example, which might not be the best, but if somebody was an office person who was, doing general office, but now they are tracking the health and, helping to do health screenings or something more than 50% of their time, then that would be that 50% or whatever time is directed to COVID this fall can also be used. So I do think for the CRF funds, most of those funds will be used for personnel in many districts. Of course, there's lots of other things that they're doing, equipment purchases to respond to COVID, cleaning supplies, and all of those things. ESSER also has the ability to use on personnel. It might be substitute teachers that are needed. Both funds can be used because if teachers are out because of illness or quarantines, then substitute teachers is another one that can be used.
So this is a finance accountant's either dream or nightmare, depending on what at each school district, to try to figure this out.
I think it's more of a nightmare for many just because it's so much extra work and
It seems like it.
It's taxed the district's business officials greatly, yes.
I'm sorry to hear that. Board Member Rankin, I see your little hand.
Yes, I just want to take what Madam Chair said to the next step. We have accountability built into all this money. Is there accountability where we hear from districts how they spent it?
Yes, there is. And so number one, we're doing our best to make sure that they understand the limitations with these funds, that there are specific allowable uses, but there is monitoring and reporting requirements. So again, we're starting with the CRF funds. And so they have had to report to us on a quarterly basis. So first as of June 30th, and then again, September 30th, and then the upcoming one after December 30th. And it's a very, very short turnaround. The one in September was due on the 2nd. So they had 2 days, which was very difficult. An equally similar turnaround time at the end of this calendar year. Any unused funds will have to be returned almost immediately. I believe that's January 9th. So very tight turnarounds. So there's the reporting aspects, and ESSER will also have some similar reporting aspects as well. And then there's monitoring. So we will do monitoring to confirm that, yes, those funds were used pursuant to allowable uses. And if not, then they would be subject to return. We're hoping that that doesn't happen because we put a lot of focus on what is allowable and fielding questions on a daily basis. But there is that provision. And so we will be doing monitoring, again, starting out with the CRF funds because of the time constraints, but then continuing that monitoring for the ESSER over the next 2 years.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very good.
Colleagues, any other questions of Ms. Mello or Ms. Oates? Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. We love to talk numbers, don't we?
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. So it is 10 o'clock. We're a bit behind, but I'm going to suggest a 20-minute break, folks. So I'll see you at 10:20. I'm hesitant to turn my machine off because who knows what'll happen since it's now suddenly working.
sure Vice Chairman Durham will not be joining us the rest of the meeting. And I think Board Member Flores, are you there? I see her number. I think she's still muted. Board Member Flores?
I think we should go ahead. We've got
Here.
people.
This is Val
falling in
Flores.
falling
I'm here.
out today.
Okay, she's here. All right, Corey, we're ready to go live. Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a notice of rulemaking for the rules for the administration of the waiver of statute and rule 1 CCR 301-35. Commissioner, is staff prepared to provide an overview, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm going to turn this over to Bill Cottonsteady.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. This agenda item is a notice of rulemaking related to 1 CCR 301-35, rules for the administration of the waiver of statute and rule. The purpose of this notice is for technical rulemaking to incorporate changes following passage of House Bill 2010-48, commonly known as the Crown Act, which was written to protect against discrimination based on a person's traits that are historically associated with race. The Crown Act identified various provisions of Title 22 that included non-discrimination protections and further elaborated on these protections to prohibit discrimination based on hair texture, hair type, or a protective hairstyle that is commonly or historically associated with race. The Act also specified that these new statutory protections could not be waived by the State Board of Education, either for school districts or for charter schools. The proposed revisions were made to align the rule to this new statutory requirement. For information supporting this item, we have provided a red line version of the rule, a clean version of the rule, and a crosswalk of the rule to statute. CDE staff recommends that the board approve this notice to begin the process of bringing the rule in line with the new statute. If approved, we would then plan on returning in January for the rulemaking hearing.
Thank you. Before we have a discussion, do I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I would be pleased to make the motion. I move to approve the notice of rulemaking for the rules of the administration of the waiver of statute and rule 1 CCR 301-35.
Thank you, Board Member McClellan. That's a proper motion. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Do I need to go down the line? Colleagues, do you have questions? Do you want to put up your little hands if you have any? Seeing none. Board Member Flores, are you back?
I have no.
Thank you. Would you call the roll, please, Ms.
I
Moran?
have no questions.
Great, thanks.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Goff?
Yes.
Board Member McClellan?
Yes.
Board Member Rankin?
Yes.
Board Member Sheppel?
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder?
Yes,
That passes 6-0 with one excused.
thank you. Next item on the agenda is a notice of rulemaking for the rules for the administration of the Educator Licensing Act of 1991, 1 CCR 301-36. Commissioner, is staff prepared to give us an overview, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. O'Neill.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is Colleen O'Neill, the Associate Commissioner of Educator Talent, and today I am presenting a notice of rulemaking for the administration of the Educator Licensing Act of 1991. This is a result, so just to keep in mind that we just closed these rules a little bit earlier, we are reopening them because this is a result of legislation that came forward in the 2020 legislative cycle. So for detailed information, I just want to remind you that you have several documents in front of you. or online, the redlined version of the draft rule, the clean version of the draft rules, a crosswalk of the statutes, and then a PowerPoint presentation, which I'm also displaying here for us as well. This particular rulemaking process has been initiated again from that legislation from the 2020 legislative cycle. Today, we're going to talk about specific pieces of legislation, not the entire rule set, but specific pieces of legislation that impacted educator professional development per House Bill 2011-28 and House Bill 2013-12. Some amendments to educator preparation as required by Senate Bill 2158, a few moments of updated endorsement criteria for the adult basic education endorsement, and then of course we always include technical fixes because what happens when we start renumbering things is that influences a lot of the rules. So the first thing I want to talk about is House Bill 2011-28 and 1312. These two bills were passed and they affect educator preparation and professional licensure renewal requirements. We wanted to bring it to your attention specifically because these do really impact all educators across the state. Specifically, House Bill 2011-28 is concerning the education requirements for educators to increase special education awareness of special education issues. House Bill 2013-12 is concerning behavioral health training requirements for educator licensure. House Bill 2011-28 amended educator preparation and endorsement requirements for all educators. That means that they are required to have specific training, professional development, and preparation in the laws and practices relating to educating students with disabilities in the classroom. That includes child find and inclusive learning environments. House Bill 2013-12 amended educator preparation requirements for all educators, requiring behavioral health training that is culturally responsive and trauma and evidence-informed. The next couple of slides, I'm going to talk more deeply about what those actually mean and how you see them reflected in our educator licensing rules this time. The legislation actually combines those both pieces of House Bill 2011-28 and 2013-12 actually combine to create a 10 contact hour recurring educator licensure renewal requirement. The bill requires the bills together, I need to keep saying that because they work together, require 10 contact hours out of the 90 contact hours that are already required for professional licensure renewal. Again, these are in those areas of laws relating to special education and the behavioral health training requirements. So let's talk a little bit about how those actually manifest themselves in our rules. The 10 hours required can be obtained through a combination of any courses, but what has to happen is at least 1 hour has to be related to students with disabilities, and 1 hour of that professional development has to be related to behavioral health. But together they have to come to 10 hours. A single professional development course or activity can absolutely be applied in both categories. So if I take a single one that has both of those things, they can be applied to either one of them. The requirement, and I think this is important to underscore, this requirement must be met every 5-year renewal cycle. The exception to that is we basically get a 3-year kind of grandfather period. So any teacher whose license has less than 3 years left in the renewal period as of June 30th, 2020, has until the end of the next applicable renewal period to complete the requirements. So that means that the first time this could possibly take place for people really is right around 5 years. And then for those that have at least 3 years remaining, it could be upwards of 8 years out. I'm going to stop there for just a second and I'm going to switch gears over to Senate Bill 2158. This bill also had impacts pretty specifically to educator preparation, not to educator licensure. But it is a professional training for educators bill that mostly impacted the Department of Higher Education and allowed them to bring in some grant programs and some funding that had not been used and be able to use that for larger distribution. It did, however, amend a couple of things that are pertinent to our rule cycle this time. The first thing it really amended was it put in a numeric requirement for field experience and a reference to state statute. So that's 800 hours of field experience, what we would traditionally call student teaching, required for our teachers. This, for many people, sounds very familiar because 2 years ago, it used to be 800 hours. Then statutory changes in the 2019 legislation changed it to a 1-year requirement. Legislation for 2020 changed it back to an 800-hour requirement. So if it feels like we've had this conversation before, we have a couple of times over the last few years. So I just wanted to bring that to our attention. Instead of continuing to shift the hours, what we have done is made a reference in our rules out to the statutory requirements that really live under the Department of Higher Education and are just recommended hours that go into our rule set for the Board of Education. So you will see that in the rule set. And then that bill also changed some language pertaining to the possible recommendations for the board and the Higher Education Commission for the approval of our educator preparation programs. This will sound familiar as well because the Board of Education already had these words available to them for the renewal. So that word probation is something that we have already been able to do, but the Commission of Higher Education did not have that explicitly outlined in their rules or in their statutory language. So that bill, Senate Bill 2158, codifies that in their language. The other change was in the Commission of Higher Education, disapproval has been replaced with termination. You will not see that in our rules because you have always had the opportunity to do that. It was the Commission of Higher Education that did not. But I do want to point that out because that has been an ongoing conversation we've had as we've really talked about our opportunities with our renewal or our reauthorization process with our educator preparation programs. So I'm just going to tell you a few next steps, and then I want to stop and take any questions that you have from here because this is a notice of rulemaking. We will open the written comment period. It would begin today if you approve the rulemaking, the notice of rulemaking. That means we would post all these rules on the CDE website for stakeholder feedback. We would broadly communicate that, especially with the renewal licensure requirements, provide an opportunity for feedback, and then we'd review that feedback, update draft rules if needed, and we'll be back before you for a rulemaking hearing, possible vote in January of 2021 board meeting. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that, bring us back to conversation, and am more than happy to entertain any questions or comments you all may have around our current rulemaking process.
Thank you so much. First, I'd appreciate a motion, please.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the notice of rulemaking for the rules for the Administration of Educator Licensing Act of 1991, 1 CCR 301-37.
Thanks so much, Board Member Rankin. That's a proper motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, let's go to questions, colleagues. Board Member Rankin.
This is for Ms. O'Neill. Do we have on our CDE website, or will we have, let's say a person came into the state or is already in here and knows they need 10 more hours, of where they can possibly get that if it's not available at their school, if they're a special ed specialist, it may not be something that's in the rural areas very close to where they live. And I just wonder if there are options for them to get educated online or other ways than having to travel to a college. Can you help me with that?
Thank you, Board Member Rankin. I think that's a concern actually that we've heard bubble up just through even the draft rulemaking process. And so one of the ways that we originally had planned in this legislation, and just 100% transparency, was that we would be able to have some support, FTE support, to literally go out there and collect all of the opportunities that would align with this and post that on the website. That was removed from the legislation by the time it got to the final moments. We've had discussion internally, however, and with our ESSU unit around how we can really start utilizing what's already on our website and what ESSU does as outreach, as well as our behavioral health outreach. So we'll be definitely collecting those pieces and making sure they're linked out to individuals so that they can try to find some of that through the resources that CDE already provides. And then we will do our best to collect the rest of the information. And what I'll tell you is that there are so many professional development options out there that we do not approve every single professional development opportunity, but we'll do our absolute best to try to lead our educators to our current offerings that we have.
I think that even if it's a small list, at least if we have the approved list available as soon as this comes into play, is better than having people take courses that they think will apply and don't.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, colleagues? Board Member Flores, do you have any questions?
No. Excuse me. No, I don't. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Maramba, would you call the roll, please?
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Sheppel.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
That passes 6-0 with 1 excused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O'Neill. The next item on the agenda is a notice of rulemaking for the rules for the administration of the Adult Education and Literacy Grant Program 1, CCR 301-98. Commissioner, is staff ready to provide an overview?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to turn this set of rulemaking over to Misty Ruthven.
Thank you, Commissioner Anthus, and good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is Misty Ruthven, Executive Director of Student Pathways. It's nice to be with you today. This rulemaking process is a result of Senate Bill 20-009 from the most recent legislative session. This bill prompted the Adult Education and Family Literacy Grant Program in 22-10-104 CRS to update the grant criteria and reinforce the program's focus to assist adults in attaining basic literacy and numeracy skills that lead to credential attainment or employment. Also, the definition of an eligible grant applicant was expanded to include a tribe or tribal nation and consortia of partners. The goal of this program is to increase literacy, numeracy, and digital skills for adults without a high school diploma to attain credentials and a job, and assist adults in providing academic support to their own children or children for whom they provide care. Current funding for this program is $970,000, and these are matching funds for federal dollars. So for today's notice of rulemaking, there are 4 documents. These are updates to existing rules for the program, and in your information on board docs are the memo outlining the bill that requires rules to be updated, a clean copy of the suggested rules, red line copy of rules, and a crosswalk of rules to statute. So turning our attention to the rules, staff have worked closely with Katie Lanaha here at CDE and the Attorney General's office to ensure the process for application is streamlined. We have also reached out to stakeholders for their input. No changes were recommended from stakeholders or grantees. The rules address the application and awarding process, criteria for outlining per statute, and required reporting. These items are also statutory, and there were no non-statutory additions. As a reminder, the vote requested today is a notice of rulemaking, and then we'll come back to you in January of 2021 for a hearing on these rules if today's notice is approved. With that, Madam Chair, are there any questions?
Thank you. Colleagues? Well, first of all, I have a motion, please.
I move to approve the notice of rulemaking for the rules for the administration of the Adult Education and Literacy Grant Program, 1 CCR 301-98.
It's a proper
Second.
motion. Thank you.
Second.
Ms. Goff for the second. All right, now,
Second.
hands up. I'm learning how to use that little yellow gizmo. Do any of you have questions? Do I need to go down the line?
No.
No. All right, Ms. Maramba, do you want to call the roll?
Board Member Flores,
Yes.
Board Member Goff,
Yes.
Board Member McClellan,
Yes.
Board Member Rankin,
Yes.
Board Member Sheppel,
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
That passes 6-0, one excused.
Thanks very much.
Next item on the agenda is an opportunity to recognize 3 Colorado teachers for national awards that they've received. Commissioner?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We're always really pleased to recognize our amazing educators, and so I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Cobb to tell us a little bit about these outstanding educators.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Anthus, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the board. Give me 1 second, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my notes here. Great. Our first award goes for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. The Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching are the highest honors bestowed by the United States government, specifically for K-12 science, technology, engineering, math, and/or computer science teaching. The awards were established by Congress in 1983, and the President may recognize up to 108 exemplary teachers each year. Awards are given to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics and/or computer science teachers from each of the 50 states, including the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Department of Defense Education Activity, or the U.S. territories as a group. And that includes American Samoa, Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. The award recognizes those teachers who have both a deep content knowledge of the subjects they teach and the ability to motivate and enable students to be successful in those areas. Since the program's inception, more than 4,800 teachers have been recognized for their contributions in the classrooms and to their profession. Awardees reflect the expertise and dedication of the nation's teaching corps, and they demonstrate the positive impact of excellence teachers on student achievements. And awardees serve as models for their colleagues, inspiration to their communities, and leaders in the improvement of STEM, which includes computer science education. Recipients of the awards receive a certificate signed by the President, a paid trip to Washington, D.C. To attend a series of recognition events and professional development opportunities, a $10,000 award from the National Science Foundation, and an opportunity to build lasting partnerships. Our 2019 Colorado PAMST awardees, the first, as you see on the screen, is Linda Cochran. Linda has been an educator for 18 years. She has taught 8th grade mathematics at Altona Middle School in the St. Vrain Valley School District for 14 years, and previously taught at Silver Creek Junior Senior High School for 4 years. Prior to teaching, Linda was a computer systems programmer with IBM. Linda believes that all students are capable of excelling at mathematics and empowers them to learn at their own speed through inquiry-based strategies. By helping students visualize mathematical concepts through real-world application, she enables students to deepen their own understanding through practical experiences. Linda is a founding member of the Rocky Mountain Math Teachers Circle and established a students' math circle with an intent to ignite and sustain girls' interest in math. She is a co-advisor for the National Junior Honor Society as well. Linda serves as the program leader for the Living History Through Travel program, exploring our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And that program includes a focus on national patriotism, which culminates in a student-led school-wide assembly paying tribute to hometown veterans. In addition, Linda has completed a 200-hour yoga teacher training and brings mindfulness, breathing, meditation into the classroom to inspire calming practices for a generation of stimulated learners. Linda received her BS in computer science and mathematics from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and her MS in curriculum instruction at CU Boulder. She holds a Colorado teacher's license in secondary mathematics. A quote from Linda about this is she notes that it was truly an honor to be recognized for the Presidential Award. She says that in receiving this award, I feel that I represent one of many untold number of teachers who are all deserving of this recognition for the tireless support they give to one another, for the countless hours spent investing in enriching curriculum, and for the time spent off the clock tutoring, nurturing, and encouraging those who need more than mere instruction. I am humbled by the multitude of amazing people found in education. So once again, please join me in congratulating Linda. Our next awardee goes to Erin Greenwood of Boulder, Colorado. Erin has taught young scientists for 15 years. She has spent the last 3 years teaching 8th grade Earth and Space Science and the previous 11 years teaching 6th grade physical science at Nevin Platte Middle School in the Boulder Valley School District. She previously taught 7th grade life science at Casey Middle School for 1 year. As the National Educational Association's master teacher in the Better Lesson Master Teacher Project, Erin works with students, colleagues, district staff, community members, and university researchers to design and publish next generation science standards aligned units. She created a complete NGSS unit toolbox and teaches district level professional development courses and coaches other science teachers. In her classroom, Erin uses primary research from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science to engage students in NGSS study about a puzzling fossil site in Colorado. Students conducted similar paleontological digs to discover historical climate and geological conditions leading to the creation of this phenomenon. Erin leads outdoor experimental education programs for students. In 6 years, she has led over 300 student expeditions to wild places that bring science to life in authentic and engaging ways. Erin earned her Bachelor's of Arts in Environmental Science and a BA in Cum Laude in English Literature from Washington University in St. Louis. She has a certificate in undergraduate studies from Oxford University, a post-baccalaureate certificate, and a Master of Arts in curriculum instruction from CU Boulder. She is certified in secondary science and is certified by the National Board for Professional Teaching in Early Adolescent Science. A quote from Erin, she notes that, to me, the Presidential Award means that our country's bias toward progress is alive and our drive for innovation is thriving. Science is a vehicle for progress and innovation in which all people can participate. I have dedicated my career to create learning environments that invite all students to act as scientists, because science is for everyone and everyone is a scientist. This recognition proves that my innovation is a small part of the greater vision for science, teaching, and learning. So again, please join me in celebrating them both.
Congratulations. Do you have one more, Mr. Cobb?
I do, Madam Chair. I'm going to switch screens real fast. All right. At this time, Madam Chair, we'll transition over to our Gilder Lehrman Award. Hopefully you all can see the correct screen. This award is going to be presented to Barbara Taylor, who is a teacher at Pomona High School in Jefferson County School District, and has been named the 2020 Colorado History Teacher of the Year, which is an award presented annually by the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History, the nation's leading organization dedicated to K-12 history education. The History Teacher of the Year award honors one exceptional K-12 history teacher of K-12 teacher of American history from each state and U.S. territory. The selection of the state's winner is based upon several criteria, including a deep career commitment to teaching American history, evidence of creativity and imagination in the classroom, and a close attention to teaching with documents, artifacts, historic sites, and other primary materials. Barbara received an award of $1,000 and an invitation to participate in the 2020 Gilder Lehrman Teacher Seminar. She will also receive a one-year membership to the Colorado Council for the Social Studies and a free registration to its annual conference. In addition, the library at Pomona High School will receive over 30 books and journals on American history, along with historical documents for primary source investigation. Barbara is very much deserving of this award, and she promotes the love and learning of American history in her classroom. Barbara has shown her dedication to teaching by partnering with outside organizations to provide a high-quality experience in civics and U.S. history for her students, holding leadership position in the school and numerous professional development classes to further her craft. Barbara was selected for this award because of her passion and dedication to teaching American history in a way that makes American history come alive to students. The History Teacher of the Year award is a component to preserve the Preserve America initiative, which recognizes outstanding American history teachers and the crucial importance of American history education. Please help me congratulate Barbara on receiving this distinguished award.
Thank you, Dr. Cobb. On behalf of the board, I would like to extend my congratulations and appreciation for the hard work to Linda, Aaron, and Barbara. I'm very impressed. Let me go down the line for any comments or remarks that my colleagues may have. Board Member Scheffel.
I'd just like to say kudos to these wonderful teachers. We know that what goes on with students in classrooms is just the magic that really education is all about, those aha moments and igniting a passion for learning. So I'd like to thank these teachers along with all of us, I know, just for their passion, their commitment, and their expertise and competence. It's very inspiring.
Thank you. Board Member Flores. Board Member Flores. Board Member Goff.
Hello, this is Val. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I had to unmute myself. Hi, I want to congratulate you on your National History Teacher Award of the Year for Colorado. History is one of my favorite subjects, and I laud you for being this year's Colorado Teacher of the Year. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Goff.
Yes, reiterate the congratulations and the thanks that we all share for your good work in this continuing good work in very challenging times. I think you're some of the best examples of how the teacher mind for innovation and creativity and empathy and care for students plays out in so many wonderful ways. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for representing all of your teachers, colleagues so well. Have a good year remaining.
Thank you. Board Member Rankin.
I'll just ditto what everyone has said. Congratulations. I think it's a loss to IBM for the lady that came to be a teacher in our state, but a real win for us, especially during times when we're remote learning. So congratulations to all.
Thank you. Board Member McClellan.
Yes, I'd like to share my congratulations on this well-deserved honor for all three of these outstanding teachers and thank them for their service and their commitment. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you especially to the 3 recipients of the awards. We honor you. Next item, we're ready. It's a discussion of the upcoming standards revision process. Commissioner?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to turn this back over to Dr. Cobb and Dr. Colsman to give us a little preview on what's coming for the standards review and revision process. I know it sounds like we just did this, but my colleagues will explain why we're doing it again.
Thank you, Commissioner Athas. Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. Yes, we are here to talk about the standards review and revision process. The purpose of this presentation is to, one, give you an overview of the changes in legislation, which is bringing us back a little bit sooner than we had originally anticipated, and most importantly, to get your feedback on the process that we put together in terms of revisions. There were a couple of pieces of legislation that came about during the 2020 legislative session that created some changes to the academic standards process. The first was from House Bill 201032, which adjusted the regular review and revision cycle of the Colorado academic standards. You'll recall originally that the Colorado academic standards were scheduled to be revised every 6 years thereafter. And what this piece of legislation did was it changed it such that a third of the standards were revised on a specific cycle. So we wanted to make sure that we were clear as we move forward with that. Additionally, there was another bill, House Bill 2013-36, that directed the State Board of Education to adopt standards for Holocaust and genocide studies on or before July 1st of 2021. So to get a little bit more in depth with House Bill 2010-32, House Bill 1022 adjusted the existing review of the standards, and as I'd mentioned, there is a process now that will require a third of the standards to be reviewed every 2 years. In looking at this slide that you see right now, we did have to make an adjustment to the slide from the one that was originally sent. There was a typographical error in terms of the date by when the revision process would occur. So in looking at the screen right now, you'll note that a third of the standards, by virtue of the change in the law, will need to be through a process by July of 2022, with a plan of implementation for the 22 through 24, and the next review would occur during 2026. Then the next third of a group would need to occur by 2024 with implementation for the 24-25 school year, and another subsequent review of those not until July of 2028. And then finally, a third of the standards by July of 2026 with an implementation of 26-27, and then not for another review until July of 30. And so effectively what this means is that there will be a more routine experience in terms of the revision of standards as opposed to the standards all being revised at one time collectively. And so in terms of the revision process, the standards requires that the state board adopt also for the Holocaust prior to July of 21. And it also directed the department to utilize the stakeholder process in order to fund this particular component of the revision. Additionally, there's a requirement in the Holocaust Genocide Studies Bill that required the department to create a resource bank containing some sample academic content and some sample instructional programs, and requires resources also to be available by July of 2021. In this, it allowed for the department to seek gifts, grants, and donation, which is a process that is already underway. So in the planning for the review of the process, this is some work that our staff has done and put a proposal together. This slide here you will see should look relatively familiar, as it was also what helped to guide our prior process. We wanted to continue to move forward with similar principles in terms of it being transparent, making sure that it is inclusive by involving key stakeholders, certainly research informed, consistent, substantive, and improvement oriented. Fortunately, since we're re-engaging in this process so soon, we have an opportunity to reflect back on those lessons that we learned from the prior experiences. And so the process will, again, our proposal is to engage in a process very similar to what we did before, which is to have an iterative cycle where CDE staff will facilitate the review and the revision within the content areas, rely upon review committees who will propose those revisions and certainly gather feedback. But ultimately, you as the state board will be the ones who will make decisions to guide the review and revision process and certainly approve those revisions. So the current proposed review process that we would have recommended would be to start with the arts categories along with social studies. You'll notice that the planning and process for that would occur starting in 20 and 21, with the revision happening in 21, 22, and then transitioning in the following year with implementation occurring thereafter. The recommendation would be then to follow computer science, health, PE, and world languages with a hope of finishing up with the assessed areas at the end in July of 26. You'll notice that social studies was recommended to be on the front end in phase 1. And a portion of that is because certainly there will need to be a conversation about the revision or the incorporation of the Holocaust genocide studies information into the standards in prior to July of 21. And then what will happen in the subsequent year would be the revision of the social studies standards altogether. So all of these are simply proposed as a proposal for you all to consider. And so the basic process for each committee will follow and will go as follows. We'll conduct a survey and engage in benchmarking reports, and then the committees will use that information to inform the revisions and recommendations. And then the committee will present that information to the board and stakeholders for feedback, and then the committee will revise before making final presentations to the State Board of Education. And as you'll see, our intent would be to be able to gather as much public input as possible throughout the process as we did previously. So with that, Madam Chair, this gets us to the concluding frame of our presentation, and we'd like for you to engage in a conversation with you to know what questions you have regarding the department's initial plan for the standards review and revision process, any feedback that you might have, and any changes that you would like for staff to consider.
Thank you, Dr. Cobb. Let me just go down the line, please, for questions. Board Member Sheffel, do you have questions, comments, requests, concerns?
I don't know that I do at this time. I need to look a little more deeply at it, but I think you've laid it out in a well-organized fashion. I think the sequence looks about right as far as what gets reviewed first. So I don't think I have any additional questions right now.
Okay. Board Member Flores?
Same here. I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
Board Member Goff? Board Member Goff, actually, I can't see the screen again, so I don't know whether you are muted. Yes, you are muted. There you go.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to read your minds if you were talking to me. I have no questions. I appreciate. It feels like deja vu, but that's good. And I do understand and appreciate the addition of the Holocaust and genocide studies that puts social studies right at the forefront for now. I just wonder if there will be, and maybe there has been, some feedback about the time that's necessary to wait in order to implement that. If that bill was passed this last session, I know there was strong interest in it. And so, I hope, excuse me, I hope the public and the legislature is understanding of the timeline that it takes to get that implemented. So, whatever messaging can be done to keep people involved while they're impatient, that would be helpful as well.
Thank you. Board Member Rankin?
I just have a question about the Holocaust and genocide. I'm a little confused on the standards and when we're local control with curriculum, how that might overlap what we should be doing. And I just want to make sure that we are aware of that when we work through the standards.
Madam Chair, Board Member Rankin, yes, the committees are very clear in terms of making sure that there continues to be that distinction between curricula and standards, and so making sure that it's written at a level of what students should know and be able to do. But once again, please keep in mind that the committees will bring recommendations to you all as board members, and you all certainly will be the ones who will vote and approve and adopt whatever is recommended.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cobb.
Madam Chair?
Board Member Flores, go ahead.
Yes, I was just thinking of another that we don't really have, and it may be already, and that's the Native American genocide in this country that I think we need to take into account. And also, Mexican Americans in the country, in the areas that were taken over. Specifically, I'm thinking about the history that I know in Texas. It's specifically in South Texas that took place, and I would consider that a genocide as well of Mexican Americans or Mexicans who were already there, but whose land land was taken over, and the people that owned those lands were killed, massacred, for the incoming wave of settlers that came in and took that over.
Thank you. Board Member McClellan?
Yes, thank you so much for bringing this forward. And I'm actually really glad that this is being split into 3 groupings and handled every 2 years instead of everything all at once in a single cycle. So I think this is a positive adjustment, and that every future board will be able to more thoughtfully delve into any proposed changes. So in this first round, if we have folks in our district that might be interested in participating in, say, the History Committee or American History Committee, what would be the process for them to join that board? And can we get the information about how best to invite constituents who might be interested in participating in these early committees?
Madam Chair, Board Member McClellan, yes, we will have a process similar to what we conducted last time, which was to have an application process. And then those applications would then be reviewed, wanting to ensure that there was a good representative balance of folks from all across the state, to make sure that there was make sure that everyone could be well informed in terms of the process. So we're not yet at that stage of seeking committee members for this particular review, but once that does happen, we certainly will make sure that we provide that information to you so that you'd be able to pass it along.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I guess the question that I would have is, do we recall what, if any, feedback we received after we adopted the social studies standards last time around? It seems to me that this is an area that ends up being more controversial than others. Frankly, I can't remember what, if any, of the big issues, but are there some things that we can address this time around that we did not address adequately before, or did not explain adequately, or are seen to be missing? Do you recall that? I'm hoping you have notes, etc.
We have notes, Madam Chair, but it's not coming to mind right now. I could ask Dr. Colesman to see if she could weigh in, and we could check her memory on this particular topic. What I do recall from the committees is that they were fairly confident in what was put together. However, in terms of the public feedback, that's something that's escaping me right now. Dr. Colesman.
Right. And again, I don't have any specific recollection of any feedback, but I think that's part of the process that we will have in this review process, which is making sure we have a survey to get information from the public. And especially knowing that this year is the first year of implementation of those revisions that you all adopted back in 2018. So teachers will just be now teaching from these new standards, so it'll be very fresh in their minds. So we'll be able to get very good information from them. And we have archived all of the information from that past review and revision cycle. In fact, we had documented the entire process in a report for posterity's sake. We didn't know we would be pulling it out so quickly, but we have documentation of the entire process, as well as all of the public feedback that was received in that last cycle. So all of that will come to bear as we embark on this new cycle.
So what's the time span between adoption now and adoption the next time around for this particular area of study for social studies?
So I'm sure we can pull that up. So as Dr. Colesman noted, the actual implementation of the academic standards occurred just this year as a result of the revision that was completed in 2018. So teachers who teach social studies and the arts, provided that there's no concerns with this proposal, would have 2 years to get comfortable with the new standards before they'd have to start thinking about the process for the revision, with the implementation occurring shortly after the transition.
Yikes. Okay, that should probably give us some motivation not to make drastic changes, if at all possible. Or I think we're going to really frustrate our schools. And I'm not sure, I guess one of the things that I don't know much about, and maybe one of the two of you can help me with that. How much of the curriculum delivery is in textbooks and how much is in other, maybe original documents or something, so that we're not talking about a real short cycle for textbooks, given we make changes? Has that been considered, and how can we help districts with that one?
Sure, Madam Chair. I think that's certainly something that the committees would be able to consider. I think simply because curricula is so different across schools and districts within the state. That's why it's critically important to make sure that we have folks from the field to be able to talk about the actual real world impact of specific types of changes. And it certainly, any teacher of American government or history is going to love to search for primary resources, but obviously that's going to require additional work. And so certainly when that information, at least the initial introduction to it, is found within a textbook, it at least helps makes the introduction to the content a little bit easier. So with that in mind, I think that we're going to rely upon them, then be able to kind of take that feedback, and that certainly will be information that we can present to you all at the time of the recommendations for the revisions.
Great, thank you. Dr. Colsman?
The only thing that I would add to that is that we do know that a number of districts were in support of this bill, and part of that was so that they could align their textbook adoption processes in a way that is staggered, so that they are making investments in instructional resources and textbooks at not all at once, but kind of spaced out. So I think that once districts see what our plan is for the revision cycle, they may likely start to think about what those textbook and resource adoption cycles will look like to match the implementation dates that we have in the PowerPoint.
That's good information. Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Board Member Goff?
Yes, I don't know that this is even necessary at this point, but have you had any forethoughts about the fact that the assessments schedule has been at least upended a little bit, and how that might influence, first of all, the coming in awareness of any content committees that are formed for this, but just how will that play in? As I'm saying this, I'm sitting here thinking about all of the other content areas that are not state assessed. So, you know, how they go about designing their accompanying assessment thoughts is probably relevant here too. It's just that I guess looking ahead and preparing for future budget considerations and or how the work can best tie in with the standards themselves. That's just where I am right now. I also, I'll just add this final, well, probably not the final comment on standards, but I appreciate that this was accomplished as well. I do think it just makes it a lot easier on everybody concerned to have a focus point of just a few standards on a regular basis. And I'm talking on behalf of the board as well. I think the load that involved when we do 10 content areas and just trying to keep it all straight. So I was happy to see that bill pass, but I am concerned though that we're not that we can control it, but that we let what is a good process of standards and the best type of measurement system for those standards that we can do. I'm sorry that that's been upended somewhat here, but you know, I wish you all good luck with it. I'll be around out here watching, but I'm excited for it, and I hope our schools are looking forward to it too after this next couple of years goes by. So, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Colsman and Dr. Cobb. Feel free, colleagues, to send them a note if you have some subsequent thoughts so that we don't ask them to move on, go down the line, and then in some way upend with a very, very different suggestion. So I would encourage us to provide feedback within the next month. Would you agree with that, Commissioner?
Yes, that would be very helpful. If you have any thoughts on process, the sooner the better.
Okay. Will we be discussing this next month?
I'm not sure. This was really just a kind of a preview, so we'll have to see if there's relevant new information for you. Maybe in January, but not. You know, we'll bring it to you if there's new information for you to discuss.
Right. So that's one of the reasons I'm encouraging folks to get back to staff, because it'll be 3 months, and I would guess you'll have hopped into the hot water, and we don't want to give you additional surprises. So thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is board member reports on current activities. I'm going to jump in and be first just so that I don't forget some of this stuff. And then I think board member Rankin needs to hit the road and she'll be second. So I wanted to well, a couple things. One, I wanted to respond to the concerns that only one of the 5 letters that came in at the last minute were read yesterday. I would recommend, with your approval, colleagues, that we return the 1/2 hour allocation of time and the 3-minute limitation. And maybe someone can help Ms. Maramba so she doesn't have to read continuously for that 1/2 hour. Because that was a challenge yesterday. The other thing is I would recommend that we require some kind of a cutoff. Unfortunately, the way we do it in person, people just show up and that makes it very easy, but some kind of a time cutoff so that staff is comfortable with that. And I would guess maybe 5 o'clock the day before a meeting, but if you have some other suggestions, please share that. I think we should go ahead and read the letters that came in last time, or came in yesterday, read them at the next meeting, even though we know they are posted and available. The 4 letters that were not read. If that's okay, colleagues, are you comfortable with that? Okay, good, thank you. ECS, as you recall, Education Commission of the States has a conference, usually I believe in July. It's very good, and I missed it. I understand they are going to have a virtual meeting November 18 and 19. There's no fee. I'd suggest you put it on your calendar. I haven't seen much about it, but I did see it one time. And if it's anything like their normal meeting, it should have some very good speakers that are helpful. What I like about the Education Commission of the States is that it's sort of a mixture of educators and legislators and teachers of the year. And it just has a very, it has a large constituency group that I find helpful rather than just educators speaking to one another. Then the other thing finally is that the NASB conference is coming up beginning October 20th. October 20th is the new member institute, which normally you would participate in if you were a new member. It is significantly reduced in time to, I believe, just an afternoon, a little over 3 hours. Anyone is welcome to participate. It's an interesting curriculum because you learn so much about what happens on boards in other states. So even though you're not new members, I would encourage you, if you have the time, to participate in that. And then the conference, the regular sessions are every afternoon, beginning on the 21st from 1 to roughly 5 or 6. And on the last day, there are 2 breakouts that should be of interest to us. One of them is the Western States, which is where we get together and share with other Western states what is going on. And then the regular annual meeting will be at 4:30 in the afternoon on the 24th. Rebecca will be representing us, but if you're interested in finding out what all else is happening, I recommend it. The registration fee is $125. That's the cheapest you will ever get to go to the NASB conference. And that really is just to pay for what they hope to be a pretty sophisticated platform to make this easier to attend. Jane?
And it's all virtual, right?
It is all virtual. There is no location.
Are we to assume that the times given on all of these are Eastern Standard Time?
No, my understanding is, well, let me see, I printed this out. And supposedly, while it says the times have been adjusted for your time zone based on what's on their website, I don't think that's correct. So I'm going to encourage you to look, whether it's Eastern time zone or our time zone, because I did see somewhere where this particular platform adjusts for it, but given the times that I'm seeing on here, I'm going to guess that didn't happen in the agenda that I printed out. I will try to get more information on that and get that to everyone. But I think we still do need to do the registering for those of you who have not registered for it.
The other thing, I did download the app, the conference app, and so far I have found it a little bit hard to figure out. I know that Carol put out an email to us this morning that to make sure we verify the email address we want to use, so that because they need to be aligned, whatever email we use to register needs to be lined up with the one we use to get access to this online app, to the conference itself. So that's a little confusing. Plus I tried to get into it the other day, which I assumed we could preview and start organizing a bit, but it requires an invitation code, and there is no such thing available so far. So I'm just saying that there's still time. So hopefully that.
I will provide some input that this is very clumsy.
Yeah.
And see if we can get a note out to everybody on how to do that. Thank you for that information. I've not gone that far. I had trouble actually printing out the agenda, and I did manage to get that. But I do see some potential glitches. We are learning as we're flying the plane, or building as we're flying the plane. But thank you for that input. I will work on that and make sure that we get that information back to all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Rankin, I know you need to hit the road. Back to.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. It's a 5-hour drive. Probably I'm the furthest away from home that I could possibly be. I'm in Cortez, by the way, the southwest corner of the state, and I did have an opportunity to contact the superintendent here, who I know, Lori Hawkins, and had a nice chat with her. And I plan to attend the superintendent's conference next month.
Next week.
This month. Next week, yes. I've already signed up for that. And other than that, I've just been pretty busy on the campaign trail and seeing some beautiful parts of the state, especially in the fall. So thank you for that, and hope to see you next month.
Thank you. Safe travels.
Thanks.
Wait, Madam Chair, can I leap in with a quick question for Board Member Rankin?
Go ahead and leap.
Okay, Board Member Rankin, I had been asked for some feedback from teachers regarding our REDACT rulemaking and implementation, and I know that that's an area of importance for you, so I wondered if there's any possibility that you could stick around just for a moment to give your thoughts.
Well, thank you for that. I too am hearing a lot of questions and interest actually from taxpayers as to what is this? And I love those questions. I love the fact that they're interested in hearing and learning more. And Board Member McClellan, if I could talk to you later today, I would really appreciate that. I've got to drive back and I have a dinner to go to tonight. So I'm kind of.
Okay, that'll work.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm going to sign off.
Bye-bye. Safe travels. Board Member Schaffel?
Yes, like Board Member Rankin, I've been meeting with CDE just regarding the REDACT and the programs that are approved or not approved and how that process works and how we can ensure we're getting the best programs, whether they're core or intervention or whatever, for schools who receive the funds to use them to best effect for students. So that's been good, and we're continuing to pursue that. Met with some folks regarding child safety and technology, and we'll follow up with you, Commissioner, on that issue. Also benefited from a presentation by the Big Idea Project, We Educate, on remote learning, which was very helpful. Also met with the person who began the Center for Relationship Education. Her office is in the Greenwood Village area, and really good work that they're doing around social emotional health of kids. Also prepared to be on a panel for COVID and how it's affecting education that'll air on Saturday. And then just meeting with some parents, talking to them just to have issues about remote learning and how we can maximize achievement in the age of COVID. So it's been a really good month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board Member Groff?
Thank you. I'll just read the list here. Speaking of NASB, I have been a member of the nominating committee for several years, but I did my latest work with them, which part of Rebecca's task on the Friday afternoon will be the vote on the new chair-elect. So we go through that process. The nominating committee basically recruits candidates or does communication with memberships nationwide about which office positions are open, and trying to, educate, make aware people about what each job entails. So our next vote for the new NASB chair-elect will be done by the delegates on that Friday afternoon. I did sit in, as many of you did, to the Education Committee's meeting where the State Board also had a chance to hear some of the issues that are being brought up. It will be interesting always to follow what happens in the session as a result of that conversation and many others that are happening. I was once again a member of the Colorado Teacher of the Year selection, nominee selection committee, and we spent an 8.5 hour Zoom day. we all better be getting good at this, because I'll tell you, I'm getting a lot of practice with Zoom meetings. But we have 7 finalists for 2021 Teacher of the Year. They have been introduced publicly. CDE is, of course, a big factor in that whole process, and the press release came out the very afternoon that those 7 folks were interviewed. And we will have, as we always do, an outstanding representative of teachers in Colorado. This is one of the best things I've ever done in my life as an educator. It's been an honor to be a part of that group. I also have been taking part in the 10th birthday celebration of ICAP. As you know, it was 2010, but actually the bill that created the ICAP program was 2008-9 years, and it's been an interesting evolution of that program. And what we've learned is that ICAP is pretty much now just a part of life tapestry in our high schools and now many middle schools. So we're celebrating its 10th anniversary. I've done one panel along with other people who were around from the get-go. And also I did a short, quick video statement about what is being termed as the Meaningful Career Conversations initiative that ICAP has undertaken. So I did a quick 30-second message of a meaningful career question that will be presented at a town hall that ICAP and all of its advocates and stakeholder groups will be putting on coming up soon. I've also been asked to present the winner of the Colorado Congress of Foreign Language Teachers Teacher of the Year Award. This year's winner, it's already public, so this is an introductory videotaped message that I did and that will be shown during the conference, which is this weekend. The annual selection of the Teacher of the Year is considered one of the highlights and kind of culminating PR and awareness building campaigns for world language study. And this year's winner is a former mentee of mine when I was doing the induction programs in Jefferson County. She joins actually 2 others in that same class that were selected as Teachers of the Year. And that was back in the day when I suppose all of us who taught could say this, where you are amazed after the fact at how well students succeed in spite of you, because that was my very first induction group. And I was in awe of all of them from the beginning of the first day. And boy, have they done well. So in spite of me, there's been a lot of good news coming out of that group. And I've also been contacted by the Colorado Association for Gifted and Talented. As you know, I've been serving on that advisory committee as our liaison. And I have been notified that I am an award winner. I think that the publicity around it will be coming out soon, so I'm not going to spill the whole beans. But that's one of the nicest things ever. And I will be always following that group. I think they have an awful lot to contribute, and it's been a real joy to watch their success in advocating for the gifted population of kids that we really deal with, and I'm glad that they have been made aware. However, hopefully, and helped by my involvement through our board discussions about their work, and I'm just honored and very grateful for that. So that's my story. Sticking to it.
A great story, Jane. We were holding the beans until next month.
Thank you. Thank you.
But it's yes.
Thank you.
Congrats. That's wonderful. Board Member McClellan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was very pleased to be able to attend or remotely attend the Colorado Special Education Advisory Committee meeting in September, where we welcomed new members. And I just want to remind board colleagues that there are openings on the CX. So this is a great time to share this opportunity with your constituents, so we can try to have the membership reflect the whole state, as well as maybe parents of students of different ages and who have come to the special education committee through different needs. So it's a great time for us to reach out to our constituents and let them know that that opportunity is there if they would like to serve. I'm also looking forward to serving as our board's delegate to the NASB conference later this month. So thanks for the opportunity, Madam Chair. And then this is the item that I am hoping to get a little bit of board feedback on. I promised a teacher in my district after hearing concerns about the timeline for proving compliance with READ Act implementation. Some of the teachers in my district are concerned about the challenges that they're facing around COVID in terms of the extra hours that they are putting in. And so they're feeling like the 45 hours is, in some cases, potentially difficult for them to meet before the beginning of the 2021-2022 school year. And this might be something that they would appreciate having feedback from all of us on, if there's anything that we can do to make any flexibility for those who would have a challenge meeting that timeline requirement. I know that we have the option for the praxis test, and then there is also the designation that if they already have certain designations, that they may already be in compliance with the requirement. And we also have that free 45-hour course through the CDE site. So there are a number of ways to meet the requirement that we've rolled out, including one that has no cost at all. But I think the concern is that they are running out of hours in the day because they're having to be prepared to keep their classrooms clean in a way that they haven't had to in the past because of COVID protocols. And they're also putting extra hours into being prepared to go virtual at any given time without knowing when that might happen. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that, and if you're hearing from constituents in your district as well.
Well, I'll address this a little bit. We did spend some time discussing this, I believe, 2 meetings ago, and acknowledge that this is a really hard year.
Yeah.
But also acknowledge that the kids that are being served desperately need to be, especially now under the circumstances, need to have our teachers really know how to teach reading. And so the way I recall the discussion is that we were unwilling to give any kind of a blanket waiver. We were encouraging I've not been hearing, to my knowledge, it is a school district that has a high level of frustration. And I hope that staff can kind of direct some of the resources, that kind of information to them, because I'm not hearing that. We recognize that there may be districts that are unable to be totally ready. And to the extent that they are nearly there, their teachers are nearly there, I don't know that we would be uncomfortable and slap their hands. I think we would recognize the work they've done. But a blanket waiver was unacceptable, I believe, to all 7 of us, is the way I recall that discussion. Commissioner, am I wrong?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we did have this discussion, and we did bring it forward to you because we are hearing that. I do just want to be clear. I will get in trouble if I do not tell you that we are hearing from all districts that this requirement is very challenging. So they may not all be sending you emails, but it's a regular discussion we have. You are correct. The board a month or so ago did not want to entertain a blanket waiver. And you all can always revisit that and talk about that. We can bring you more information about the challenges some of our teachers are facing. But it is still a pain point. It's still a pain point across our state.
You're muted.
Okay, got it unmuted. I think one thing that might be helpful, I think one of the challenges for one of the larger districts in the 6th Congressional that I'm hearing a lot from in particular may be that it is a district that has seen a number of COVID cases pop up. It's a more densely populated area with folks who travel a lot and are working in environments where they may be exposed. And so these are, in some cases, teachers that are working at schools where they are having to see several cohorts go online while other cohorts are meeting for in-person learning. And I think the added hours associated with those adjustments, which may not be all the adjustments they have to make this year, it may be part of why I'm hearing more from my district than some others might, where they may have very low case counts. And so the protocols may not be quite as pressing if their public health department locally is telling them this is less of a concern where you are. So that might give some insight as to possibly why I'm hearing quite a bit about the concern for teachers. And I'm not sure how to address that for teachers that are putting in a whole lot more hours in specific schools or specific districts than might be the case in other places. So this might be something for me to take offline with staff to see if there's anything within the board's prior decision that would allow for an avenue for addressing those specific concerns, or whether this would be something that the board would have to take up again in the event that they wanted to do that. So, but I did promise to bring that forward and wanted to just kind of invite board colleagues to think about that and to also get staff feedback as well in terms of any ideas they might have for how we help address the concerns that were brought forward. So, and then lastly on my list, during those conversations, it came forward that I think this is probably a concern that staff may already be aware of, but apparently some parents that have discovered that if you homeschool your children, you can then bring them back with a more flexible time frame if you choose. And there is some concern that bringing kids back after the October count is completed will create some real budget challenges for some of our districts. And that might be something that we want to make Ms. Mello aware of, and our legislative liaisons. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but what I'm hearing is that some of the teachers are concerned that perhaps we may see a little bit of a bubble or a balloon of enrollments happening maybe even in January, but without the funding to go along with. And that now that they've made adjustments for some cohorts going online while others are in person, that more adjustments will then have to be made. And so I think some of those concerns are contributing to the stress that's being experienced at the local level. And I just wanted to pass that along. It may well be something that that staff is already aware of, but I just wanted to share that that's among the things that I'm hearing.
Commissioner,
thank you, Board Member McClellan. Yes, we are hearing that October count this year and enrollment. You probably touched on the two biggest pain points. There are a couple more, just in terms of broadband and access. So there are some real pain points out there right now. I hear about them all the time. So yes, enrollment is a big question. I do believe legislators are aware of that. I'm not sure that there's much we can do at this moment. We just have to see what enrollment looks like and see whether students are coming back. But this is one of those reasons why we wanted to withhold some of our ESSER funds. And also think about potential new federal dollars. If we see a large influx of students come back, I can't promise anything, but there may be ways we can address it there. I know legislators are thinking about that too. So it is a big topic of discussion that's happening right now, and it is a fear right now, and mostly I will say about just not knowing where kids are at this point. Making sure that we know where our students are, that they're safe and that they're educated, and so there's a lot that goes into these concerns they're really important.
Commissioner, if we have students coming from online programs back into in-person, Jane, is there a way to transfer those funds to the school district, or is that a done deal? Can you explain that?
Yeah, this is a pretty meaty topic to get into right now when I don't have the rest of my team on with me. We have pretty complicated October count rules and true up rules and transfer rules and all of those things. So there's some things we can do this month, but once we get to the end of this month, there's some additional challenges. We've never had a year like this. So we've never really had to dig into all the details of what all the options are. And so, we are doing that right now. And I know legislators are interested in that as well. And so we continue to do some work on that, but we're really going to have more information once we look at the October count numbers. And so we're a little bit, we need to see how it pans out.
Okay. Will you have any information by our November meeting, or is that too soon because you've not had a chance to true up?
It's probably too soon. We usually get better numbers in December. just because and we think it's going to be a harder true up this year because we have to look at any duplicate counts, any kids that may have enrolled in multiple places. We think that might happen quite a bit more this year. And there's no manual way to do that. That's a lot of contacting districts and schools to say, we have Johnny Smith in both areas. Where is Johnny Smith really? And so it does take some time. And, we're going to have to see how this unfolds a little bit to understand the enrollment and the cost impacts on districts.
Great. Any other comments, colleagues?
I'm here,
All right,
Val.
Val, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I don't have very much other than, getting messages from parents and such. Something that came in, I guess, on your mailbox was that Education Leaders Report, which is titled Start Strong, Supporting Early Childhood Education Through Policy. And that was the committee, that I was on before. And so they came out with a wonderful report on that. That's NASB, the National Association of State Boards of Education. So that report came out, and it looks pretty wonderful. At these 4 states that are working on, that do not have a strong early childhood education, and about the monies that came out, for them to work, and also the plan. The plan is very important on how to get started on how to get started. And this is the recommendations from several board members that were included in that education workshop, early childhood education workshop. And I was one of the co-chairs for that group of board members that, came up with these ideas. So it's in your mailbox. I got one.
Great. Thank you for your work, Val. Appreciate that.
Thank you. And I think that Steve Durham will be continuing or is continuing on this. And it's a good group. It's a great group. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. I believe we will stand in adjournment until November 11th. Stay well, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Adios.